So, have I been wrong about Fabian Hürzeler? Have we been proven wrong about Fabian Hürzeler? Welcome back to Seagulls Central. My name is Adam MacDonald and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Thank you very much to returning to my channel, or if you're new here, for finding this channel and making it your new destination for all the biggest, best, most in-depth, most interesting, the best community in terms of Brighton Hove Albion fans out there on social media. Thank you very much. As I always say, if you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on. It means you'll never miss a video. I want to get into a conversation today as we're on the international break. Can you tell we're a bit dry for content? But I thought it might be a little bit of a good time to step back, reframe the picture a little bit and think around how we're all feeling around Fabian Hürzeler. Look, you might be one of those people who's said the whole time, I'm on his side. I support the manager. Why are you even having this conversation? I'll admit it, I always haven't been. Even now, like, I'm never 100% sure. It's really weird for me. I've always been... I do like to think of myself as a positive fan, and I would never be overly critical. I think all the times I've raised criticisms, I feel like I've tried to justify them with evidence and try to be balanced with it, never come down too hard, no matter kind of how you might feel. I might title a video. Actually, if you watch it, you might see that the debate is there and both sides are there. But I have felt with this managerial appointment a little bit kind of less willing to... I've always been quite defensive of managers and always been quite defensive of players, and it's weird. There's something about this one where I just haven't... I have had my doubts and I have criticised and I have not kind of got it sometimes, and it's weird for me. It's a weird feeling. But I think, to be fair to Hürzeler, I think in the last maybe 2 months or so, month and a half, 6 weeks, I think I'm beginning to understand it a bit more. I'm beginning to have my mind changed slightly, and I'm beginning to see signs about maybe the fact, the things I have said around him were wrong. I think ultimately my viewpoint on Fabian Hürzeler is this. I quite like the bloke. I think he's got a very good squad, and I think he's doing a very decent job. An 8th place finish last season in his first season, let's make no mistake about it, is a very, very good season for Brighton. As I always say, any season where Brighton, finish 17th or above, they can finish 17th on goal difference. That's a good result for Brighton Hove Albion. Another year in the Premier League. And eighth place with your first season in the Premier League as a 31-year-old at the time. It's impressive. It's good. My concern is more around the fact that I almost wonder whether he should be getting more out of these players, this squad. Okay, you might say, but Adam, what's better than 8th? Like, can he really do much better than 8th with this squad? Maybe not, but it's not even so much about results for me. I understand Brighton, whilst they're quite inconsistent, they're kind of consistently inconsistent, and ultimately that gets you kind of 8th to 12th place in the league table, doesn't it? So that's kind of fair enough, but I feel like we are a very inconsistent side, and I do feel like maybe player for player, I'm not seeing that uptick in quality, the coaching making the difference in the same way that I feel like I've seen it personally with other players in the past, with other managers, may I say, in the past. De Zerbi is a prime example of improving players really clearly. We saw it under Potter as well, clear improvements in certain players. Houghton as well, we saw the way he was able to turn that squad around and really squeeze out the best from players. You can go further and further back. With Hürzeler, is there a player where you've maybe gone, yeah, he's really proved it? Now, you can maybe point to a Yasin Ayari. I think that's certainly a fair point. I don't know whether that's how much... Is that just the fact he's had loads of game time? I don't know. I sometimes look at players and feel like they haven't had the best coached out of them. They haven't had real improvements. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. And I sometimes wonder whether he is himself the difference maker. I can't personally imagine myself getting inspired by him in the change room when he's talking. I know you sometimes see the videos, but I just can't imagine it for myself personally if I was sat in that dressing room. So those are the kind of feelings I have, right? But in recent weeks, you've got to say, I think we've pulled some very, very good results out of the bag, and we've begun to see the kind of cogs turn a little bit and a bit of a change. Maybe we're coming over a certain hill in terms of the difficulties we've gone through. Now, maybe it's just a good period of form. Maybe this isn't a long-term thing. But I think in terms of keeping clean sheets, I think this is a positive thing. I also think in terms of being able to break down that low block that we saw against Leeds, I think that's something that has really impressed me. Yes, I think we've got to caveat it with the fact it's Leeds United, probably one of the worst sides in the Premier League this season. maybe a much poorer side than some of the other teams who've even been promoted in the past. I think we have to say they were a pretty poor side when they came to the Amex. However, Brighton have made a real, buggery of trying to break down those kind of teams in the past. And the fact we were able to get past them and actually play with tempo, play with pace, play with precision, play with intensity. You hear Fabian Hürzeler talking a lot about intensity. Well, actually, I think we saw in that Leeds United game real intensity. I also think I've begun to see a little bit more of a tactical plan in games like the Newcastle at home game. You really saw the way that Brighton were trying to deal with, firstly, Voltemada, and then also really exploit that midfield space and deal with the overloads. Other games as well, good results away to Chelsea. Okay, admittedly, the kind of game went in our favour a little bit. Man City as well, we've had some good scalps. Conversely, I think, you then look at the Man United game. I think that was an example of a game where I think Brighton were poor. I do think Brighton were poor. I think Brighton missed chances as well, but I do think Man United actually looked pretty good. And we suffered from the fact that, and this is not for Fabian Hürzeler's fault at all, but players like Carlos Baleba just simply didn't turn up on the day and was essentially anonymous. So I think I'm beginning to see signs of things I like about this side. I think Brighton needs to do a few things over this, next few month period to kind of really work out where this season's going to be. If I had to make a prediction now based on the first 11 games or so of the Premier League season, I would say it's looking more and more likely it's going to be around a 10th, 11th place finish, which I suppose would be a backward step from last season. But if you think about De Zerbi's second season, 6th, and then I think it was 11th in the end, we just missed out on the top 10 on the last day. It's a similar kind of points total, similar finishing to that. I would have felt this season was a real opportunity with the quality of players that we had for us to kick on and go and get European football, considering how many other teams were preoccupied with European football. And who knows, we're only 11 games, we're in just over a quarter of the way into the season. So, who knows what will happen after Christmas when the back end of the season starts coming, when tired legs are setting in, all of those kind of things. Maybe that will be when Brighton's kind of freshness and depth of squad, etc., not being in Europe will make a difference, and maybe we will see that. But yeah, I do feel a little bit better, to be fair. I do feel a little bit more confident in this system, in this setup. It's very clear that we are a high-pressing team. That is the fundamentals of the Fabian Hürzeler side. Often I've wondered, what is the tactics? Is it just lump it into minteh, lump it into mitoma, and kind of hope that we're Moments FC and we score a goal out of moments of magic from individual players? Or is it that we're being coached perfectly? I don't think we're being coached perfectly, but I think we're seeing a bit more of an intention, Certainly with the way we defend, you're seeing that. The Newcastle game is an example of that. The overloading in midfield, bringing Wieffer from right back, that move makes a little bit more sense. Trying to, you see when we attack, the way that we bring him into midfield, the way that Ferdi tucks in, the way that we get bodies in what they call that zone 14, the gap between the midfield and the opposition defence, really overloading those spaces. You see that as a sign of Hürzeler's side. You also see it with the way that we press. Danny Welbeck, a brilliant presser, clearly one of the reasons why he's been consistently in this side. Rutter, not only is he talismanic in his energy and his vibe that he brings, but also, a really, really good presser. Minteh, hard worker. You can see why these players are being selected week in, week out. Baleba with energy, Yasin Ayari with energy. We are a very high pressing team. I think we saw a really good performance against Crystal Palace. We saw good results from when we were pressing. We looked like the side who were going to force opposition players into mistake. It's interesting how we went from under De Zerbi being a side where we were, inviting the press baiting, not being pressers ourselves, being possession hoggers and trying to get other teams to press us. Actually, we're now that pressing side. A team where we've got really good running stats, real energy. You hear Fabian Hürzeler talking a lot about intensity. That's what he wants when he kind of marks what a good game has been. It's always around intensity for him. So I do feel a little bit better. What do I want to see over the next few games? I guess I just want to see the consistency of performance. To be honest, I'm not one of those who's like hell-bent on results as a fan. Like, why? How can you be? You drive yourself mad, particularly when you're a Brighton fan or a team who traditionally don't just live off success. But for me, it's about performances. I want to see the consistency in the style of play that we're trying to do. If over the next 5-10 games I see, we really are a high pressing side. God, we're really, we're really kind of continuing with these kind of tactics. I think we'll feel a little bit better. If we see positive performances where goals are scored and chances are created, not just out of kind of moments of magic, but actually by patterns of play and trying to kind of work through the opposition, I will feel a bit better. I also want to see a bit more personality from Hürzeler as well. You see on the touchline, very energetic. I think you've got to praise him for that. But that connection between the fans, I think, is something he is lacking a little bit. In the way he comes out onto the pitch. I want to sometimes see him give it a little bit more, particularly to the away following and things like that. So I think there is it's an interesting moment for us fans. For me personally, this is kind of just my opinion, and I'd love to know what you think. Has any of you changed of yours? Do you feel like you've always felt a certain way and nothing's changed? Do you feel like we're in a better place than we were kind of 6 weeks ago at the last international break, or even further back than that? Let me know. I'd love to know your thoughts. As always, if you've got this far in the video and you've enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button and turn your notifications on. I would love to have you join me on this journey as the fastest growing Brighton fan community out there on YouTube. And let me know in the comments, what do you think around this whole debate? We'll be back in a couple of days' time to talk more and take stock of the season so far after 11 games, after about a quarter of the season. We're going to do ranking every single Brighton player. So watch out for that one in the next couple of days. Thank you very much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, up the Albion.